Hello and welcome to another episode of Steelfur Speaks with, of course, me, Steelfur, aka Finbar, London-based Flesh and Blood player. Ooh, it has been I wouldn't say a busy few weeks in Flesh and Blood, but I mean, every few weeks is a busy few weeks in Flesh and Blood, really, isn't it? You know, we've had Tales of Aria come out. I've obviously been focusing more on Nationals content and focusing on the Steelfur Supremacy playlist, which has been doing quite well. People seem to be very interested in, more competitively focused content and where that's being aimed. So I'm quite happy with how that's going. And I guess we've just sort of been turning our attention towards the upcoming Nationals tournament, which is happening in less than 3 weeks in the UK and obviously a bit longer in other places, as we are the earliest of the Nationals to happen. So I guess I wanted to turn some attention in this episode just to talking a bit about, about life and what's been going on in terms of Flesh and Blood and things like that. Because obviously this week, and I think in fact maybe today, is the 2nd year anniversary of Flesh and Blood. And I'm sure all the other content creators are going to be doing kind of a retrospective into what they think Flesh and Blood has been doing and how they think it's been going for the past 2 years. And I kind of want to do the same thing because I am super popular about this. Not popular. I have been getting more popular. I'm at 720 subscribers now. So we're doing really well. And thank you everyone who subscribed recently. I really hope you're enjoying the content. And as I kind of mentioned at the end of my last video, whilst I am only putting out one video a week at the moment, I'm kind of chilling out a bit because obviously in order to do reasonably high level competitive videos for you guys, I have to continue to play at a reasonably high and competitive level, and that means investing time I would put into doing more videos in the run up to the UK Nationals, into putting practice in for UK Nationals. And of course, once the UK Nationals is over, there will be a sort of break in competitive gameplay in the UK for a couple of weeks, and the other Nationals will be going on. So if you're thinking, well, Steelfur hasn't put out that many videos for October, do just keep that in mind. Obviously, I'm respecting, my testing group and things like that, where I'm not putting out too much information on what they're playing, what decks they might be taking, any secret spice they've got. But of course, once our Nationals is over, there will kind of be a bit more free reign to talk about what we saw at the tournament, what the emerging meta was at the tournament, what decks came out, things like that. So I'm kind of just in a bit of a holding pattern where I'm helping you guys try and think through what deck you want to play with a bit of sort of like, analysis and, thought processes and things like that, helping you a bit with your pack one, pick ones and your draft strategy and ideas. And once I've done all of that, I guess we will be at Nationals. I'll be giving a bit of video feedback, not probably live from Nationals, but maybe post Nationals when we see how I do. The meta is wide open, which is really good and really bad. It's good in the sense that if I turn up with a strong deck, people will maybe not be prepared for it because they won't necessarily have seen it coming, or they would have stuck to something they know, and it will be worse. But I could equally make the wrong call because I haven't been aware of what other people are playing, and we could have a situation where I show up with the wrong deck and just tank. But hopefully all the draft practice and the CC practice I've been putting in means that whatever deck I choose, because I'm quite good with a few of the decks, will be good in the long run, and I will do well at Nationals. If I don't, that's fine. I'm going to have a great weekend playing Blitz, playing Sealed, playing the PTI, PTQ, whatever it's called, and just having a great weekend with my friends. So, I'm deliberately not saying, hey, look, you've got to try and win this. I'm saying more like, wouldn't it be great if you've practiced a lot? Wouldn't it be great if it went well? And that's kind of just my own way of going into these tournaments, because, if I start adding pressure on myself to perform, then I really will just not. So keep things nice and chill, taking things nice and easy. And obviously I actually have quite a busy month with work this month as well, so I need to sort of balance time for relaxing and talking to people and all that kind of stuff. So that's what's going on with the channel this month in terms of people wondering what content's going to be coming out when. I'll be doing roughly one video a week in terms of like lead up to Nationals and how to get in the right headspace, how to prepare for the tournament, that kind of thing. And then, of course, I'll be doing some talk videos where I just analyze the state of Flesh and Blood and how people are feeling about it and things like that, which is what, obviously, my Steelfur Speaks channel was originally created for, and what I plan on continuing doing. So this is why Steelfur Speaks today is just more of a bit of a rambly video talking about the game and why the game is fantastic and why we should all play the game. And I guess to kick us off there, so it's the 2nd year anniversary of Flesh and Blood. How is the game doing? I would say it's doing very, very well. Obviously, at this point in my life, I have played a lot of new TCGs because I've never really had the desire to just stick with one. I've played Star Trek, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, WWE, Legend of the Five Rings. I tried Duel Masters. I tried. Some of these games are very good, by the way. WWE, fantastic game. Even if you're not into wrestling, I was never into wrestling, but WWE was just a really good game. It had a really good resource mechanic, and it really felt like a fight back and forth. Something like Lord of the Rings TCG, I still play. I've got loads of it on the shelf. It's just a fantastic game. And I play stuff like Arkham and things like that. We've seen lots of card games come and go. We've seen lots of card games be somewhat popular for a year or two and then die away. I will say that out of all of those games I've played, Legend of the Five Rings obviously had a very, very long run, which had very good popularity. But even then, we were still seeing like big events with like 300, 400 people. After 10 years or 4 or 5 years of stuff. And we have seen with Flesh and Blood that has started, much earlier than we've seen with other games with other games like Lord of the Rings, like Star Trek, TCG, like all of those other things. They've never been this fast, this popular, which really does tell you that there is actually a lot of staying power, I think, to Flesh and Blood as a game. I would say, so if we're looking kind of at the years in review, obviously the launch into America has gone well. The calling of 1,000 people has been a real win. We're not seeing, we'll see how the European calling does to see how adoption is going on here, but I expect there to be another 500-600 people, which kind of mirrors where it is in Europe at the moment. In the UK, we've got 100-person nationals. There are probably about 400 or 500 players. So, it is growing strong. But, it still has a long way that it could go. We are getting a lot of people asking questions about it in local game shops, wherever I go. People are saying, hey, what's this game? Should I give it a try? What's it like? So I think there are a lot of just good things happening and options, that people are getting into in terms of giving the game a try, not writing it off, it's not Magic, or I'm already invested in Magic. We have had a few people say that to us, and I think that is going to be a fairly common refrain that people are used to hearing, which is, I'm already too invested in Magic. I can't get into another game. And I think that is okay. I think it is okay to get that response. I don't think it says anything bad about Flesh and Blood. I think people are cautious, and it will just take a couple of years for, person X, person Y to get in on the game. I can't think we can really expect everyone to just be happy to jump into a new game that does cost a reasonable amount of money. So I think adoption... But here's the thing. So I think adoption will continue. I don't think it's going to slow down. We are attracting people who aren't traditionally Magic players. We are attracting lots of people from the old Keyforge scene in the UK. We're attracting lots of people from other scenes as well who haven't, who have games that have abandoned them, like Legend of the Five Rings, like Keyforge, like things like that, who just want something new. We're getting some people in who've been playing LCGs like Arkham Horror before. There are people who haven't really been big into CCGs before and have just looked for something to get into during lockdown. There's quite a few of those going on as well, which is very interesting to see. People turning to CCGs just to get that energy that they haven't really been able to get anywhere else, which I think is really great to see. So I think the growth of Flesh and Blood will continue. I don't think it's going to get slowed down. I don't think we're going to run into a wall of, but it's not Magic, so I'm not going to play it anytime soon. I think it will just keep going. And I'm really excited to see that, and I'm really excited to see how that goes. I guess one moment of caution is that there are only a certain number of potential, and I firmly believe this, there are only a certain number of potential TCG players in a particular country or area, so I don't think we are something like D&D, which can have, we'll say, mass market appeal. D&D, like during lockdown, massively surged because people will play it with friends. And also, to be fair, to play D&D, you need one nerdy friend to DM the campaign. You need 2 maybe just to get all the rules right and help people get their things. But if you're playing 5th edition, most people don't need to know all the rules. Most people don't need to spend hours a week just sorting stuff out. Most people can just rock up and play. So, I mean, I will say that I think, if we're talking about accessibility, I think D&D much more accessible than a card game. Therefore, D&D has a much larger potential upper market cap than card games do. That's why, Flesh and Blood is in competition with Yu-Gi-Oh! It is in competition with Magic the Gathering. It is in competition with all of those because there is just a limited number of people who are going to play card games and they have a limited amount of money. That being said, I am, there are always new people joining in. We get a couple new people every couple of weeks, and that's really all it takes to grow your community from, 4 people 3 months ago. We're at 12 to 13, 14 now. If we get to 16 regularly, that'll be amazing. So I'm just really positive overall. I think the game has done very, very well community-wise in the past 2 years. And a lot of that is just down solely to the decision of the company to, and how they handled the pandemic in terms of not what we saw other companies do, which is protecting, which is basically smothering their darlings, where they didn't allow online play, they didn't sanction online tournaments, they didn't do anything like that. And because of that, the people who were interested in playing tournaments and playing their game basically just noped out of the entire gaming environment of their card game for pretty much all of the pandemic, because card games were there to give you an outlet for online gameplay. And well, no, I mean, card games existed, traditionally to give you an outlet for in-person gameplay and a reason to meet up with friends and talk. And of course, in the pandemic, they couldn't do that unless the companies enabled these online events to happen, which of course, and people who have listened to this channel since the start, that's the reason I got into Flesh and Blood. I got into Flesh and Blood because one of my friends grabbed me and said, look, this card game is really, really well designed, but also, you've been really frustrated for the past 2 years because FFG weren't supporting online play. They weren't, letting people run online tournaments. They weren't even giving prize support to the people who weren't running online tournaments. Their flat answer, well, they didn't even answer, but the unofficial answer was, look, we can't support an online platform that replicates the cards from our game because that's a breach of the IP. Therefore, we can't support any tournaments on it. When really, other companies have, in the past 2 years, made drastic strides in making sure that it was acceptable, that it was okay. They've changed the rules about how they enforce their own copyright to make it acceptable for people to play online, and so that it's not punished or it's a temporary enforcement reprieve or any of the many, many ways you have to basically ensure that people can still enjoy your product. Because, those games were continuing to be produced during the pandemic, but no one was buying them or playing them because they couldn't play the game because the company that makes them wasn't allowing online tournaments. So, not FFG, LSS have correctly responded to the pandemic, which is one of the main reasons for their growth, by running online tournaments, letting stores charge for entry and run online tournaments, and of course providing prize support by themselves, mostly postage and things like that, for online tournaments with certain caveats, i.e. the most expensive, hardest to get prizes not available in a environment that might encourage cheating, like, for example, allowing the extended art tunics to be given away at national championships, even though obviously the ones being held online, which is a very big shame because obviously, just to keep, reminding everyone of how beautiful this is, those national championships, that was the crowning prize that people wanted. The playmat is nice, but the tunic is the real big money thing that everyone wanted to win, and obviously with that not on the table, it's a bit shit. But obviously had to be done because obviously with the webcams people can cheat more often, so it's not it's not a super big, it is just what had to happen. It's not a massive stumbling block. So the game, yeah, I mean, I will say there have been some obvious design missteps, I guess. I've been talking, I mean, we can talk about Dustblade, but we don't really need to talk about Dustblade. we can talk. I guess we should talk a bit about because I've kind of said it before that I'm not really so enamored with the fuse mechanic. It feels very similar to charge in terms of like how it affects your hand and how you play your turns, because you have to keep a certain size of hand in order to effectively fuse. And I feel like that feels very similar to charge, so it's not really an exciting expanded design space from charge in terms of a drastic fork. That being said, I mean, drastic forks aren't necessarily what you want. You know, it is often better to have gradual changes in how things are designed and made. But if those sets were designed close to each other, as I think we've been kind of unofficially told by channels and things in the background, then it is kind of weird that the two mechanics are quite similar to each other in terms of how they work with your hand, even though they obviously have the difference that charge builds up builds up advantage over time, whereas fuse requires you to use, or but fuse kind of builds up mechanics over time as well, because you arsenal the card and the card goes into the next turn, and obviously a lot of the fuse cards reward you for having those in arsenal. So I'm thinking about the arsenal draw a card cycles, so tomorrow, Polar Blast, and Electrify, which obviously reward you for fusing with that card by saying, okay, well, you get a bit of hand advantage next turn because you pitch and you draw a card and you get this extra ability in reward for you fusing and arsenaling this card. That, so tomorrow it's all right. It's good for longer games, which don't really exist. Electrify is great for pushing damage. That's fine. It's red and yellow Electrify are really, really good in the classes that can push damage. And of course we have Polar Blast, my least favorite, but it does ask, card or dominate, which can let you get a sort of +1 off Lexi instead of having to choose dominate or go again, or you can get dominate and go again. So I think Polar Blast is quite good as well. The problem is just slots for that in the deck, as well as Electrify. You start running a lot of non-attack actions over arrows. But so my thoughts basically in terms of hit or miss. The WTR set, this is kind of like the last 2 years in review. So the WTR set, great, simple mechanics, great entry point into the game. People really like those heroes. I mean, obviously I like Katsu, my friends like Dorinthia. So obviously there's a lot of affection for those heroes that has been put in over the years. And I think they have really resonated well. They do echo very basic, I would say, fantasy archetypes, soldier, ninja, barbarian, paladin, I guess. But they work quite well. The one thing I will say is that after looking at Aria, it is very clear that all of the WTR and to a certain extent arcane heroes were all elemental talented heroes at some point that had their elemental talent taken away to make them simpler. I don't think that's a mistake, by the way, because a lot of people have complained in retrospect that that Monarch and Tails are too complicated to understand for a new player, whereas WTR is very much like easy and more new player friendly, and therefore WTR and Arcane are actually better sets to get people into the game with. And they're sort of saying, well, actually, I don't necessarily want to introduce my new players with Tails, or I don't want to introduce my new players with Monarch because they're not understanding all the concepts. And that is something, of course, that all games struggle with as they gain more breadth in terms of sets. So it's not really a point of concern. It is just something to be aware of, that you might want to teach people with an easier deck. Or, maybe we can expect a set in a year or two's time to maybe have a simpler mechanic, or to get some sort of simpler hero, maybe a talentless hero in one of the new sets. Or someone new like Prism, who maybe doesn't have as complicated a keyword and is just there to be really impactful and appealing to new players. Because we have seen, and I think this is one of the points where we should praise LSS, is that the way the sets are designed is very new player accessible. And by that I mean, well, actually, if you start with Tales of Aria and you just have to worry about fuse, it is very possible to build a deck entirely with fuse cards, and like a lot of the deck building actually rewards you by following that line. So for example, if you run the Briar deck, which has which has like 6 Weave Earths and 6 Weave Lightnings and stuff like that, you will actually be rewarded for playing elemental only attacks, which obviously come in Aria only. So Sorry, lots of talking today. So there is actually a positive reward for new players playing in a certain direction with new cards. And actually, and this is a theory that will be proved out or not, because obviously there's lots of decks being tested. And if anyone was paying attention to the Gauntlet stream last week, they're obviously, because, the Fab Gauntlet happened, it was won by Bravo. The final, I think, was Briar Bravo. But there are a lot of Briar decks being tested out there that run like non-Briar attacks, like Exude Confidence and Command and Conquer, like the good ones. E-Strike, Exude Confidence, Command and Conquer were in almost every Briar deck that I saw during that tournament, right? There is an argument, and I think this is quite interesting, that there is an argument that that is the wrong strategy to take. Like, Weave Earth is actually incredibly cheap for the amount of buff that it gives you, plus the Go Again from the non-attack action. Weave Lightning for +3 and Go Again from the red is also, again, quite cheap for that effect. So there is actually an argument that says, why are you running, like Exude Confidence, Command and Conquer are great, they genuinely are, but if you can get a cheap +3 and Go Again, or a cheap +4, is it worth it to follow those lines? And it is clear from, stuff like Ball Lightning, Weave Earth, Weave Lightning, that Briar, like, kind of is, and I'm using Briar examples, but Lexi has the same thing for arrows, and elemental, like, cards, like, there's a lot of cards, basically, in the set that reward elemental and playing elemental attack actions, and those cards are clearly signposted for new players. So I guess what we have to say kind of then in retrospect is that while Tails and Monarch aren't the clear hit that WTR and Arc were in terms of easy to get new players in, straightforward set design, they do create opportunities which allow for new players to rely less on generic cards and therefore have a cheaper method of entry if they can get their head around the new mechanic. Now, obviously, not everyone is going to struggle with the new mechanic. We've heard people coming from the game from Magic who are just like, okay, cool, Chain banishes the top card. But we have heard people coming to the game from not playing TCGs, or they saw it and they like, oh, I really like playing an Arcane Archer in D&D. Oh, I can play an Archer in this. I'm going to play Azalea, and then finding out that their Azalea cards aren't as good with, that Lexi isn't as good as with their Azalea cards as they thought they were going to be, and they're not getting as many upgrades and stuff like that. So there's friction in various places, in terms of like, in terms of getting that kind of feeling of this is friendly for new players and interesting. And also, there's a bit of friction in terms of some of the design being a bit weak or feeling subpar at the moment. Though, I mean, it is worth remembering, and I want to kind of caveat this, that it is worth remembering that obviously we haven't seen the entire design of Fusion, or of Monarch, for example, because, as everyone keeps saying, there is expected to be a supplemental set in, later this year or early next year, which does include extra cards for both the Shadow and Light and the Elemental cards. Not extra cards for the WTR heroes, though they could surprise us. They could make that happen. They could include other cards for the WTR heroes as well. But at the moment, everyone's just expecting it will be an expansion for the 2 new sets, and that every year is going to be 2 draft sets, followed by an expansion set that has all of the cool stuff that doesn't really work in draft and rounds out the idea of the heroes. And one thing I will say that keeps me very, very optimistic is if you look at the interesting parts of Fuse and the possibility for effects and design and things, you can see a lot of very, very simple effects on the cards and Tales of Aria, which kind of hint at the possibility of more interesting design. And like by that, I just mean that we've got Weave Earth, right? It's a simple 3+4, and we've got Weave Lightning, which is a simple +3 and Go Again. So what's the interesting Earth or Lightning buff that does something much more than that? Is it +1 and, or is it +3 and, put 2 attacks from your graveyard on the bottom of your hand if this hits? Or is it, plus... there's so many potential options within the themes of, Lightning does extra damage, and gets go again. Earth recycles cards and gets heavy buffs. And ice disrupts and gets dominate. And there's a lot of wiggle room that you can do in that area where you don't just where you don't just repeat the same effects, where you add in more interesting ways of forking and creating more interesting gameplay mechanics. The big question for me is, how are they going to make Fuse more reliable? How are they going to make Fuse less punishing? And so that you don't have to keep these 4-card hands. Like, for example, if you're playing Briar at the moment, a lot of the time the correct answer is because you need to keep the pressure up. Sorry, I just have to reply to this message. 1 second. Because you have to keep the pressure up is to keep that 4-card hand, which means you're not even using the embodiment tokens. So I wonder, and I would be really interested, maybe if we get a chest piece that can hold a fusion card, and when the card is used for fusion, it's discarded or something that would be really cool. Or for example, an aura you can play from your hand that generates a fuse of that card when it's used. So, for example, I could play a lightning aura that gives my attacks +1, or when my attacks hit, they deal 1 damage, and then I'll be able to discard that aura to fulfill a lightning fuse or something like that. More ways to build up into big turns, because cards like Blossoming Spellblade and Ice Storm kind of demand double fusion to be any good, and they also kind of demand double fusion to even be as good as their non-fusion counterparts. So really there has to be a way for fusion to get more reliable, and until we start to see that, there's not really going to be a lot of sort of options, I would say, in terms of making these heroes better. We're really waiting on the supplemental set. And, we're really waiting on that supplemental set to flesh that out. And I think that is fine. It is fine to just, have more and be waiting for more. I think it is just worth being wary that, I guess wary for a few things. The first is that the design being fleshed out and Fuse ending up in a very good place is not guaranteed. We're optimistic. We hope that it does, because, I personally love pretty much all of the Aria heroes when it comes to theme and feel and how they are. I mean, I'm really into the nature themes, and Briar is just, right up my street. But I'm also really like Old Him and the ice and that kind of thing. And even Lexi with her, fusing and riding around on the Aurora Borealis is just really fun. So I'm really into all of the Aria themes, and I'm really curious to see what they do with them, which is kind of saying that whether or not year 2 is a success is going to kind of be based on how the supplemental set finishes off Monarch and Aria. Because at the moment, I will say that I feel the design of all the heroes is probably missing something. Prism feels like she's missing something, even though she's very good. I will say that the fuse mechanic is missing something. Bolton feels like he's missing something for sure. Just some element of... it's hard to put a finger on exactly what. If I could say, I would be the designer of the game. But, it does feel that to a certain extent they're all missing something. And obviously, Chain post-nerf is missing something as well. So, it's kind of what's going to happen next and how things are going to be coming along in the future will determine how we really feel about this game after year 2. Though I will say at the moment, obviously, we're very positive about it, right? We're very positive about it. I'm very positive about it. I think they've done a fantastic job. I think the game has amazing design, and I'm really pleased with all of that. And I really feel like the game has the legs underneath it to grow into being an amazing TCG. I will say there are some things that are bothering me, and there are some things that maybe the game needs to grow out of. The most recent example, of course, being the Rudy promo thing where, the company just gave someone $1.5 million. Why? I mean, they're selling lots and lots of boxes. Rudy's boxes are considered overpriced by most people compared to the market price that other shops are selling them for. He's still getting exclusive promos and things like that from artists and things like that. So what part of this, they could have said, oh, we didn't know he was going to sell them for $1 million, but you know the character of the person you've been doing business with. You know, maybe James White just wanted to see that experiment, but I think in the long term, you know, I don't want people to think I'm being particularly negative on that card. I mean, you know, the card is unplayable. It doesn't really matter if I'm being positive or negative about it. You know, it will never be playable. You can't even shuffle PSA. You know, we're talking like a deck that would be this big, right? But my point is very simple, which is that, like, does the game need to give someone who's already a millionaire a promo specifically to talk about how great they are with his face on? You know, I know a lot of, you know, and I'm not a Rudy Patreon. I'm not paying someone money for the privilege of buying boxes from them. Even if they do get a special promo, I'll just buy the promo on the secondary market if it's something I really need, or I really want. But I will say that, like, I do know quite a lot of Rudy Patreons in the sort of UK and Europe, and a lot of them just found, like, the art on the card. It's like, why am I just buying a card with this guy's face on? A lot of them said it doesn't really feel like Rudy. You know, essentially, like, this isn't a Fab card. This is a Rudy card. And because of that, it doesn't really feel like it's tied to the history of Fab in a way that makes me want to get this card. Like, if it was an early merchant promo with, like, an LGS selling Fab on, or a James White promo or something like that, they might have got into it. But because it was Rudy, they were just like, well, he's already, like, I'm paying him $1,000 to give him $1 million, you know, for a picture of a card with his face on. Why? And they were just like, this just doesn't make any sense. And obviously, when you add in the taxes and things in the UK, it really just didn't make sense for people to buy that card. So they just didn't do it. And they were just like, whatever. And I actually don't know any UK Patreons that did buy it. Maybe there'll be a few and they're just not talking to me about it. But most of the ones that I know who are subscribed to Rudy didn't buy it and are kind of considering their subscriptions, just in terms of, like, you know, you used to get market price boxes and cheaper than market price boxes and good promos, and it doesn't seem like he's getting the good promos anymore, or that he's, like, that keen about, you know, actually promoting Flesh and Blood. He's just, you know, as he always has been, he's using it as a money-making engine, and he enjoys selling the boxes as high as he can when the market's high, and really staying buying them back at, you know, a third of the price, like he's doing for Monarch, which is fine. I mean, that is good business, right? And I'm not one to be criticizing someone for making money. That's just, you know, that is how the world works. But obviously, when someone who is making that much money off the community is still getting preferential treatment, exclusive promos, you do have to wonder how that facets into the strategy. And the reason I bring this up is that I do actually believe that, you know, outside of the larger Magic the Gathering retailers like Channel Fireball, you know, Flesh and Blood is kind of outgrowing smaller people like Rudy. And it's not to say that Flesh and Blood shouldn't still continue to support their content creators, because they really are. And they do continue to. You know, I have friends in the UK who've gotten that content creator bundle. I got the Herald of Erudition promos from a friend who was giving them out to anyone he played against. And, like, you know, stuff like that is really cool, and they should really support them, because it's not, you know, printing some promos and sending them to some content creators is kind of cheap. But giving someone who, you know, is selling really high priced cards, you know, a special promo to sell more of your cards when you don't really need him to, you know, is a big deal. And obviously, there are other things that are going to be tested this year, like in America, for example. People are selling Monarch and WTR bundled on eBay, so you can get Monarch. You pay the Monarch prices at below market, and then you get the WTR boxes free, so they can basically give you 8 boxes for, like, the price of 4 or something, which is just a ridiculous deal. To clear their massive inventory and undercut LGSs. And obviously stuff like that just needs to stop for the game's long-term health. We don't have as many problems like that in the UK, where boxes tend to sell for market. There are occasionally discounts and sales where you get boxes for 65 or 75, but that's usually considerably after release. And usually, you know, only at 1 or 2 shops. Most people are still happy buying from their LGS, even if it is for a premium. And obviously we draft a lot as well, which does get cards used quite effectively as well. So I think there's quite a lot of, you know, positivity in terms of how this game is selling. There is a bit of worry about Unlimited coming so close, because obviously Unlimited is going to be available to stores in the UK at the end of September, to those who are running a draft skirmish first. And then to other stores who are running events, which is a good way of giving out Unlimited. But obviously it's a bit tricky, because, A lot of stores did get a lot of first edition, so it may not sell super quickly. But I do believe that having unlimited on the shelves, I mean, we've really been enjoying drafting Tales of Aria, so I do think having unlimited on the shelves is just going to be a good idea. Because just like for reference, I mean, we'll get in 2 of every set box a month or something like that at my LGS, and I run their Flesh and Blood for them, so I kind of keep track of this stuff. And we just will draft our way through those boxes in the month, and if we have, we'll do, because we tend to do bigger drafts, because we'll have like 12 or 11 people coming, so we'll just do a big super draft with like 12 people, which is a bit crazy, but it's also kind of fun. Or we'll do a draft with 9, or we'll do 2 pods of 6 or something like that, and we will just get through a box and a half every time we draft, or 2 boxes every time we draft, and then we just get through a couple boxes every few weeks, and then the unlimited boxes will go the same way, because drafting Aria is actually very fun. And sure, after nationals, people might take a little bit of a break, and they might draft a bit of WTR, and they might draft a bit of Monarch again, just mix things up. But people will go back to drafting Tales, because these sets were designed with draft in mind, and they do feel really good. Despite all my misgivings on the constructed side of things, where we say we really have to wait for that supplemental set, these games do feel really good in the sealed environment when you've had a chance to draft and get yourself ready, right? So, yeah, I mean, that's just kind of how I feel about it. I think it's kind of, I think we're in a really good position. I think there needs to be, I'd say, more done to curtail some of the more negative practices in terms of business practices in Flesh and Blood, just for the game's future survival. But that also doesn't really, it's one of these things where, like, if the player is still buying a box very cheaply, it's actually not so bad for the player. But there is a whole ecosystem here where we just need the game to, we need the LGSs to stay positive about the game and not be drastically undercut, because if they're drastically undercut, they won't want to sell the game anymore. And then where are we buying cards? Where are you playing with cards? Like, if you're not buying from an LGS and you're not selling to an LGS, then, are you just... Sorry, if you're not buying from an LGS, where are you playing? That's the question we always have in the UK, which is why people are so keen on buying boxes from their LGS rather than a big online store, just because if you don't do it, then, you don't have an online store, right? I mean, it's that... Sorry, if you don't buy boxes, then you don't have a physical store to go and play in. And that's it, really. Shout out to my local store, Rule Zero in Hackney. It is a amazing venue, if anyone is listening from London, though I know most of the London players, but, if you haven't realised this, the place we play in Hackney is called Rule Zero. It is a brand new, it was opened just before the pandemic, gaming bar / event space. It runs lots of events in its basement called Sub-Zero, which is an event space, including things like jazz nights, flamenco nights, pub quizzes, drag bingo, comedy nights, all kinds of like community and social things that are just really fun. Its middle bar is actually a proper stocked bar where you can get beers on taps, cocktails, drinks, and I would say really nice cocktails as well as coffee. It does have a fully working kitchen. They do roast dinners on Sundays. They do breakfast in terms of baps and sausages and full English, and they do lunch and things like burgers and chips and all those kind of things. And I'm just bigging them up because they are my local. I think they're amazing. It's a really great venue to have to be able to go and play in. And of course, the top floor, the third floor, is the board gaming section of the bar. It does have balconies which look out over the canals, where a lot of people just drink in the summertime, even if they don't play games. It has a board game library that you can rent from, and obviously it has a big space as well, with lots of tables to play games at, and we game there, and they do board games and card games, all that kind of stuff. It's just a really good vibe. It's a really good place, very welcoming. It doesn't really feel like you're sort of grotty board gaming shop you remember from when you were a kid. It is very much a trendy East London bar, which also does board games, and they very much work hard to maintain their aesthetic. So you can get an old-fashioned cocktail whilst, or a whiskey whilst also playing your favorite game, which is, something I have indulged in from time to time, and I will never complain about being able to do. So yeah, that's it really. I just wanted to give you an idea of where I'm playing. And obviously, you know, if you ever want to come and play there, we are doing every Wednesday night at 6:30 to 7 we start. And at the moment, we're also doing stuff on other days of the week just to get practice for nationals and just to get more sort of gameplay in as we're building up to that this big tournament season with the Utrecht calling and things like that. And that's where I'm going to leave you. So thanks, of course, for listening to this episode of Steelfur Speaks. A bit of a ramble, but then that's what this part of the Steelfur Speaks, this part of what my channel is supposed to always be for. Obviously, we have, you know, Steelfur Supremacy, which is that playlist that you can now tune into that has all of that competitive content on, and obviously look there for more videos. I have a whole box next to me that I plan on sitting next to and just going through and doing pack one pick ones of this week. And so you'll get a whole video of pack one pick ones, 24 packs, which I think will be really interesting. I am working on getting some more gameplay in, though obviously a lot of my testing at the moment, just for reasons of just for reasons of the fact that it is nationals testing with other people who are trying to get ready for nationals. I can't record so much, but I have been talking with a few people about doing some demo matches, and obviously I am, to be honest, I'm the main obstacle to that. I have some really big projects on at work. I haven't really got massive amounts of time, and I have 2 D&D campaigns that are wrapping up soon, so I haven't really had the time to be scheduling exhibition matches. But as I mentioned, I expect content to be a bit slower this month, just as I'm clearing out all that work stuff and obviously finishing up these D&D campaigns. Once I'm through that, and once our nationals is over, expect to see non-stop nationals related content from me for the entire national season, as I will become a free agent, no longer tied to nationality, and happy to just surf the winds of the internet. And I'm making this sound a lot more grand than it is. I'm going to stay up very, very late on Discord, sleep very badly, and talk to people about what they're doing, and commentate on decks, and watch all of the American streams rather than just going to sleep. So I'm making it sound really exciting, because I'm going to be surfing the windswept, of the internet for tacos or whatever it is that, if I start talking about tacos all the time, do I get really rich? Is that how Rudy does it? Can I sell you a card that has my face on it? Because I will. I'm not particularly shameless. What else is going on? So just to finish up the video, so obviously, thanks for supporting. If you've watched this far, please do like and subscribe, because you're clearly into whatever I'm doing. I do have a Ko-fi, the link will be below, page, which is essentially a UK version of Patreon, which is better for me for tax reasons, which you can support me on if you want. I do have the plan, once, of course, we get internationals, of starting to flesh that out with more deck lists, sideboard guides, that kind of thing. People who liked my Aggro Katsu list, there is a sideboard guide available, color-coded sideboard list available. You can pay £1 once and get access to it. It is slightly out of date because it was for the Monarch meta, but it will give you an idea of what I was sideboarding for that deck. And obviously, if you have been practicing Katsu a lot, you can adapt to it. That is available. I think it's becoming fairly common across the Flesh and Blood community for content creators to say give away their initial thoughts on the deck and the meta, and give away like more of a deep dive in terms of deck lists and things like that in their Patreon. And obviously, if I'm happy to talk about Flesh and Blood. I talk about Flesh and Blood for hours. But if I'm going to invest, say, an hour writing up a sideboard guide, I may try and put it behind a place where I might get a couple quid for doing it, and things like that. Just because, ultimately, time is money, friend. To quote my former favorite MMO, now it's all about New World. You just have to balance these things and how they work for you, in terms of what is worth it in your life and how I justify it to my partner and all these other kind of things. So that's a thing. A few other people have been getting in touch with me about coaching. I will say, in general, I do offer coaching to some people. I will say that the coaching that I offer is aimed very much at I would say the mid to high tier of gameplay. If you want to play Katsu or one of the other heroes that I'm quite good at, because obviously it is quite time intensive. I don't tend to offer coaching at the sort of entry level, and I had a discussion with this with someone earlier who was like, can you give me coaching? But he was only sort of 2 weeks into the game. And he was like, look, I want to make this my main competitive game. Can you give me coaching? I really want to get good with Katsu. He looks amazing. And I said to him, you know, and I think it's worth repeating here for other people who might be interested, because I will like sit down and play every Katsu matchup with you and talk you through how they work and what they work and how those things go together. But you know, that's not really for someone who's learning how to play Katsu for the first time. You know, and what I said to him was, look, here's some online armories, Kitchen Table TCG. If you sign up to his Patreon, you can enter an armory a week in the US time zone for £5. You know, I pointed him in that direction because obviously, you know, I support Louis. He's a really good guy. And, you know, I pointed him towards stuff like that because I said, well, look, the point you're at, you just need to play more games, right? You just need to get reps, right? Come back to me in a month or two when you've got more complex questions about Katsu, like how do I play into Bravo, or how do I set up this, or how do I set up that? And then we can start breaking down the details of how you do that matchup and how things work. But if it's just playing games, I don't want to be the guy you're playing games with because you don't, you know, because you haven't met your local community. You know, I want you to go out, and even if it's an online community, I want you to make a community that you can play games with, you know, for free and have fun with them. And then come to me if you want to for a bit of coaching to polish off a certain matchup or talk about something like that, you know, because obviously I do these videos and I'll talk about certain matchups anyway. But if you want a one-to-one where you can ask me all of your questions and prep, I can make time for that. But it's not to learn how to play Katsu. It's to polish the Katsu, because to be frank, Katsu initial gameplay isn't that complicated. If you're aggro, you just play your combo pieces and try and get more combo pieces and get good hands, right? And I'm not selling myself short. Like, I put a lot of practice into knowing what the best hand is and optimizing. But if you draw well in aggro Katsu, you can win. And if you draw badly, you'll lose. It's just about making sure you draw well by understanding what's left in your deck and what you're searching for, and all these other little bits that optimize that gameplay of aggro, right? Control Katsu, you're blocking, you're swinging back with big attacks when it makes sense, right? That basic level of gameplay is there, which you can get just by practicing with anyone, right? Yeah, so that's kind of, I just wanted to talk about that because I've been approached by 4 or 5 people, and I will happily provide coaching. But my first question to everyone is, you know, what do you want to get out of this coaching? What stage in the journey are you at? Am I helping you? You know, am I just teaching you how to play Flesh and Blood? Because that's not really, you know, you can get that from friends. You can just show up to an online tournament. You can do that. Am I helping you get better at a specific deck in a specific matchup? Okay, now I'm interested. Let me know what I can do, you know. So that's, I think, is just a discussion worth having. You know, feel free to approach me if that's the sort of thing you're interested in. We can talk about what works and talk about how to set that up. But, you know, yeah, it's not my main job. So, you know, I have to make time for it in the rest of my life, and that's just something to be available for. Anyway, if you're still here and listening, thank you very much for listening to my rambles, even the last bit where I just talk about more sort of practical stuff involving the channel and sort of what my plans are for it. And of course, I will speak to you all soon, because speaking is what I do, hence Steelfur Speaks. Have a great day, week, wherever you're listening to this video. It could be the, you know, 2nd of November 2025. If you're listening to this on the 2nd of November 2025, then Flesh and Blood is very alive, and kudos to you. Hopefully my channel is still going strong, and I am, you know, one of the biggest Flesh and Blood streamers. Also, one thing just to note before we end off. So I have actually applied to cast the Calling in Utrecht. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, because obviously I haven't been doing a lot of it in Flesh and Blood just because of timings and stuff, and a lot of the bigger tournaments that have been happening in America. But I have cast a lot of, I would say, quite high-level competitive games, especially in Legend of the Five Rings, the LCG. You know, I did some network casting for a while, so I have quite a big experience of casting, and obviously I have quite a detailed you know, technical understanding of the game in terms of like good heroes, good matchups, what cards they're going to play. So I think I would do a really good job as sort of a technical caster on that stream. So, you know, if you're a fan and if you're interested in me casting at Utrecht, and you of course know anyone who has some sway in that area, I already know 1 or 2 people who are sort of involved with that whole thing, and I've kind of put in a good word. But obviously, if you're still listening 45 minutes into the video, then you quite like me too, and maybe you know some guys from Utrecht and you want to give me a shout out. Tournament Center are organizing it. I just thought I'd throw that out there. This is Steelfur Speaks, obviously nice and rambly because that's how I like it for this side of the talk show I guess I run. Thanks a lot for listening, and I will speak to you all very, very soon.